And away we go.
Well, how's it going, Sam?
It's going good. It's going good.
I'm
just
breathing in the benzene air today.
Oh yeah, that whole fire down in Deer Park and the mouthy Harris County judge we have. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's that person is doing the OJT route, which I'm telling you, none of the elected populace right now are even happy with.
So when you have the fourth largest city in the nation, and we control probably 2/3 of the petrochemical manufacturing in the United States of America, it's arguably even more than 2/3. You would think that the people that were in office would be competent enough to handle an emergency situation. So this is what you get when you let Democrats vote. Okay, it just is. Sorry, but that's just the truth. But anyway,
well, hey, if we're lucky, we get to lower that voting age to 16. So the example would be Pelosi wants to. What was it? She was quoted as saying is she's always endorsed lowering the voting age to 16, and then you juxtapose that against what Beto O'Rourke said the other day about murdering children, and I was just a dumb 16-year-old.
Right? Yeah. That's just,
what?
Yeah.
What?
That's amazing. Well, there's lots of stupid news out there, and keeping in tradition with whiskey in the water cooler, we like to point out these brilliant moments of genius. And we had one recently where a lady circumvented security at a zoo to get a selfie with a jaguar.
She has not read the studies on what jaguars
what
do
they
to
do.
People. Yeah.
Well, they're probably thinking, "Oh, I want to go see the pretty car."
I'm pretty sure it's historical. You probably run with that information and go back at least the beginning of time when jaguars were around.
Yeah. Did she ever watch 1 million BC?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because it's Arizona Zoo. The lady was in the Arizona Zoo. And she decided she's going to get a selfie with the jaguar. That's what right there tells you that there's something wrong with this gal. Okay, she probably has cats at home, like lots of them.
Well, I'm thinking she's one of those people that is not a big believer in the measure twice, cut once.
Probably not. But yeah, so she circumvents all this stuff. She gets inside the protected barrier, and this cat does what cats do.
Yeah. What do you think? What happens when you put a portion of yourself on their plate?
So the cat basically tore her arm up.
Yeah.
It did. Like I said, it wasn't as gory as we would hoped it would be. Darwin's law didn't get to take place.
Now, I will say that because my first introduction to this story was, I saw it on our local news TV affiliate, and the sick part of me was the only reason I wanted to go find this article online was I wanted to capture the sound bite, because it was and she kept doing it over and over again, and I'm finding humor in this lady's suffering, but her suffering came from her stupidity. So.
Oh, no doubt. So she's a real person of genius for sure. That reminds me of this guy. God, where was it? It was he was on a tour with a group, and a bear. Thought a bear was dead on the side of the road. Was it? Let me look this up while we're talking.
Okay. A bear, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Was this a recent attack? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's nothing ever good comes from bear encounters.
Yeah, so he was mauled to death with a bear while taking a selfie with it.
Who'd have thought?
So this is let's see, this one here is in May of last year, and I love it. Warning: graphic video. Look at that. So that bear's got a hold of that dude, tearing him up.
Is that that's not a Russian thing? No, because I just saw.
Yeah, I think it looks like in Africa or something like that. It says a man is mauled to death by a wounded bear this week when he was fooling enough to try to take a photograph alongside the road.
Yeah, he's getting shaken vigorously.
India.
Something just got whatever he had just got shaken off of him.
Yeah.
Man, that thing is fucking him up.
I'm telling you.
man.
Yeah, so the bear apparently was laying there sunning, and he decided to get really close to it and take a selfie, and the bear just jumped him. God, look at that. Oh, man.
Yeah,
that's and there's a dog. There's a dog trying to get the bear off of him. See the dog taking bites at him?
That.
Yeah, it's funny because there was also a girl, it was a Russian girl, that was posting a lot of Instagram photos of her climbing really tall buildings.
Right.
Like radio towers and antennas on top of buildings.
Okay.
And she would hang like thousands of feet off the ground and take these selfies, and then she finally fell.
Because there was another dude that was either in somewhere in Asia or somewhere in I want to say a South American country, maybe in Brazil somewhere. But yeah, somebody else who would do these, like walking the curtain wall of like a very tall building, and he would do these. My butt just puckers.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I see stuff like that.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I'm terrified of heights anyway. And I can fly in a plane, but I can't be on a ledge of a building or on a window that's up high.
And it's crazy because I was never always like that. It's only as I got older that I because I remember I was working in downtown Houston, and one of the buildings I worked at, it was in the lobby was a very cavernous area, and I remember one time I had to go do something on the other side of the building, and you have to walk across this thing. It's a catwalk, but it's not a catwalk. It's just a hallway that passes. It has a bridge on it. And I remember passing over the bridge, and I remember suddenly getting this. It felt like I was caving in on the inside of myself. I was like, oh my God, that was like the weirdest feeling. So that's sort of my introduction to suddenly heights.
Yeah, the heights. Next to heights, I'm terrified of snakes.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we were watching a video. Actually, we're watching it right now in Albany, Texas yesterday. This guy was cleaning his yard, and he heard something under the house. And when he peeked under there, he saw a couple snakes. So he called a snake wrangler to come get him. Right. 45 rattlesnakes under his house.
Oh, my God.
45. I mean, and they're not little. They're huge. And so can you imagine having a crawl space in your house, and you go outside and you just, hey, honey, there's something under the house. Can you go look? And you open it up and there's like snakes. It's like snakes on the plane. I mean, it was just like crazy. But yeah, 45 of those things. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's the internet gives you all kinds of fun stuff, but
I find great entertainment in looking at the stuff I see on the internet.
Well, it's easy to fall down that rabbit hole and just spend hours. I mean, we share stuff back and forth all the time of just all the crazy shit we find.
Rabbit holes are fun.
They are. They really are. It's just, I don't know. We were talking about a movie the other day. It's a Netflix movie, Triple Frontier.
Triple Frontier, yes.
Yeah, with Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, and I remember one of the guys. He was one of the characters from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And then you have the other guy was Jax from Sons of Anarchy. And
it's a great cast, actually. It really is.
Yeah.
The dude from Kingsman 2, Whiskey, remember him? He was a helicopter. He was a helicopter. Oh, it's actually pretty good. But he was a helicopter pilot. So yeah, it's a group of former special forces guys that are basically living a regular life. One of them's a realtor. The other one's a motivational speaker. The other one is a MMA fighter.
Right.
And the other one's a helicopter pilot, I think. Is he a pilot?
Yeah, because that was the guy I was telling you that based on what I remember of the military structure,
right,
was this guy probably would have been the equivalent of the warrant, but how he interacted with the other guys in the group was, with all the warrants that I've been around, they have this kind of fatherly mannerism about them,
like a respect, basically a fatherly respect.
Yeah, but he also did. Warrants are known for doing sort of some reckless shit too.
Gotcha. So. It's funny because it starts out. It's one of the guys is an advisor in Colombia, and they're out there chasing drug lords and stuff like that.
Right.
And apparently one of his contacts is a female that happens to know where this drug lord is in Recluse.
Yeah, he has a stronghold.
Yeah, he has a stronghold in the jungle, and it's just jam-packed full of money.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think is it her brother who's missing?
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
I never really understood what was going on with her brother, other than maybe he was being held there to basically to buy her basically command her loyalty. Hey, don't fuck up, and I won't kill your brother. And I really didn't pay that much attention to that aspect of the show.
And that's probably it, because she was wasn't she muling money and everything for him? So she kind of knew where it was going.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, I guess sort of the, so to speak, the tax collector for him, because I think everywhere she went, she picked up money from the businesses that were around. I guess they were paying for protection or whatever. He's getting his taste from everybody.
So it started out pretty good. I actually liked it probably halfway through. I mean, it was funny. When you read enough books and see enough movies about how these things are put together, you can kind of start seeing a formula kind of come to the top here.
Right.
And it was funny because the advisor kind of comes back, one of the guys from Columbia, and he's kind of rounding up these guys, trying to tell them about this. It's over $500 million or something like that inside this building.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of show the cameo of each of their friends, and they show the introduction of the concept or idea, and then they finally decide to get together and go on this mission. And they show some recon, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, it wasn't. You saw that part. It wasn't really as clean as you'd expect it to be.
They're now the part that I kept laughing about is, at least from my time in the military, particularly when you have a mission, calling it a recce. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, I thought that was funny, because I was like, I don't remember that term ever being. Now, probably in some circles, they may call it that. It's just I never remember in the mission planning stuff ever hearing that name ever used when describing, when you're about to SP from a place. Hey, we're going on a recce, blah blah blah.
Right.
You're just going on a mission. That's it. Nobody needs to know what that mission is for. It's just these group of guys are going. They're going to do basically a walkabout and obtain whatever it is that they're going to obtain, and they're going to come back, and then they're going to spill their guts.
Right.
And then that's it.
Yeah. Well, so they do their recon. They come up with their plan, and they get in the building, and to their surprise, there's nobody there, or not very many people there, and they don't find any money. So then they start. I think one of the guys loses his shit and punches the wall or something like that, and finds out that the walls are stuffed with money. So they give themselves a timetable, right? They have a plan. They have an exfil plan. So the whole idea is to get the money, burn the house, get to the airfield, fly away in a helicopter scot-free.
So how it was discovered was, first the indicator was, what does that smell? Well,
yes.
It's a freshly painted room.
Right, that's what it was. Yeah, and he got into the walls.
Right, so I was like, why are you painting unless you made some kind of a repair?
Right.
And then chase that down the rabbit hole, and sure enough,
and that's what they did. So they give themselves a time limit. Basically said, okay, here's our time limit. We need to get this done and go. Well, so they're getting to where they met the time limit.
Yeah.
The guys are saying, we got to get out of here. And for some reason, one of the characters says, well, there's so much more money, let's take more money.
Right.
Well, they had this thing measured down to the time, the exfil, the weight for the helicopter, everything, the altitude, the whole thing.
Right.
So they go beyond that, and they more than double what they're taking. I think they ended up with $250 million.
Yes.
In their takeaway, which is a shitload of duffel bags. So they get in a van, they speed off, they burn the compound, okay, and then they're hauling ass.
So the total weight of that thing.
Yeah.
When it exceeds the weight capacity of the big bird that they were using.
Yeah, it was like a big Mill 17. I was like,
wow. It's like when because they slung load it out of there. So I was first off when I saw
they had some bags in the cargo hold, then they slung the rest of the load underneath it.
So when you're sling loading, basically the drug lord's booty.
Yeah.
over the country as you're leaving. I was like, you couldn't. That's just a flying fuck you.
Exactly.
That's what that
it really is. Yeah. And and so they're flying over. I think what is it? The Andes Mountains. I think
yeah,
is what they're trying to get over. Yeah.
Andes is what killed them.
Yeah, and so they have this weight issue, and so they start to get a little bit of problems. They're going up to the peak, so they chuck off a few bags. It's not enough. The gearbox goes out.
Right. Well, they exceeded the flight ceiling of what that helicopter's able to do.
Right.
With this weight load and all that stuff.
So they chunk a few bags out. Doesn't help. Helicopter's losing control. They're starting to go into an auto-rotate type thing. So they cut the bag loose. Mm-hmm. And, of course, in the dramatization of it, there's a guy hanging out of the cargo hold trying to kick the release loose, right?
That's entertainment.
And so, he crashes with all that happening. And miraculously, I believe they all walked away.
Right.
And then they happened to crash in a town where they grew poppy, wasn't it? Wasn't it poppies?
Oh no, that
or
was
heroin?
they fell into basically a coca farm.
Oh, coca farm. That's what it was, a coca farm. So they're in a coca farm. You can tell I watched the movie. I just didn't pay much attention.
Because the first thing that popped in my head is, okay, you just didn't fall into an area where some farmers are growing coca. This is somebody's coca, and this is somebody's employees.
Probably the money they stole, right? So.
Yes.
So they ended up getting into a gunfight, killed some dudes, right?
Right. Well,
and they paid them off with cash, but the youngsters, I guess it was all young boys that were there. All the older fighting guys were gone. Except they were either old men or young kids.
And chasing those guys, chasing the Ben Affleck and his group up the mountain, that really was a young man's game anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And they're hauling. So they decide that they're gonna they leave the big pile of money there, right?
Right.
They haul what they can haul, and they're climbing up this mountain. They run into problems, right? And they're being chased. Ben Affleck gets domed.
Actually, they bought their mules.
Yeah, they bought the mules.
They bought the mules, muled it up, as far as they could go before your incline becomes too great for a mule.
Right.
Which I was just that whole thing, like. For me, because there wasn't a whole lot of special effects involved in this movie, it really relied on a story, the acting amongst
for sure.
You really had to sell this thing because you didn't have any special effects to make people go wow when they're watching this movie.
Well, they started coming apart for sure. There was a lot of infighting.
Yes.
A lot of infighting. So they get up the mountain, they lose a mule. So this one mule falls down the mountain and dies, right? And then they get to a point where they are no longer effective, so they're carrying and they're lugging this shit up the mountain. Mm-hmm. Well, next thing you know, they come under fire, right? And they're fighting, and Affleck gets domed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It turns out that he was the target.
Yeah, he was the target because he's the one that started it. So, and they end up killing the dude that shot him, though. So they end up throwing all the money off. I know we're giving this movie away, but if you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. It was just one thing after another. It was just them trying to get to their exfil. There was a boat waiting for them.
Yeah.
And end up they decide we can't take the money and the body.
Yeah. When they had the exfil through hostile territory to get to the boat.
Yeah, because they lost their airlift.
Yeah, because they had basically bought mercenaries.
Yeah.
From all the air. Because I will say this, that it's a movie, so they took tactics that probably anybody is going to do. Is if you want to, if the most likely areas for people to exfil out of this country, particularly if I already knew that you flew in a particular direction, would be leaving by water. So they know where their loyalties are. It's just a phone call away. So I personally, I found the movie entertaining.
Right.
I didn't. There are some things that I saw that, okay, I know that this is not doctrinal, but that's not what this movie was about. But it was entertaining. More for me was to see how the characters acted, so I could sort of guess what their job or what their rank would have been in the structure of this ODA that they were. They were
right.
So I already nailed the warrant one was easy. The dude who's flying the fucking plane,
right?
Or flying the helicopter, that was the easy one. took me a little while I had to study Affleck's mannerisms and the things that he cared about to figure out that he was probably the Operation Sergeant Major for this.
Mm-hmm.
The captain was easy because he said he was a captain, and then everybody else is sort of probably a NCO role player of some sort. So, but yeah, that was the thing that I did as I'm watching these people and watching what they're doing in the roles that they play.
Well, what I thought was interesting. So Catherine Bigelow was the director for this movie.
Okay.
And she did Zero Dark 30, Hurt Locker. She
didn't even know
she
that.
did like K-19 Widowmaker, things like that. Anyway, so originally when this movie was supposed to come out, it was, believe it or not, it was going to have Tom Hanks and Johnny Depp.
Tom Hanks?
Yeah, back in 2010, they were talking about making this movie.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to have
All right.
Tom Hanks and Johnny Depp in it. And of course, you know how movies go when they go to funding. She had other programs that took precedent over this one, so it kind of sat on the back burner.
Right.
So I guess Netflix, they just threw some money at it and said, here, let's go ahead and make this. But yeah, so she's kind of got a history of making these kind of movies. Like a lot of people really panned on Zero Dark 30, but I actually kind of liked it. I thought it was okay.
It's all right.
It's a political movie. I mean, we get it. But anyway, it was an interesting movie. I'm like you. It was entertaining, but I just found it to be kind of full of shit in many areas. I was like, I always look. I'll be honest with you. I measure everything against 13 hours now.
Right.
I just do. To me, that was just an excellent movie and everything that it did. So I always look at those kind of. I look for detail in a movie. I know you can't give away certain things. I get that. Those guys in this particular one made all kinds of mistakes. I just thought it was silly.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was just kind of one of those things that popped up this week that we decided to look at.
Yeah. Like with, when the guys that were doing sort of the interactions where could their identities be compromised if they let people go.
Right.
Because I've had some guys that, they did Lurch team stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I know that's an easy answer for them, depending on, how much they'll be compromised. But I've heard some pretty bad stories where it goes exactly as doctrine.
Right.
Sucks to be you.
Oh no, no doubt, for sure.
But
yeah, anyway, so that's our pan on that movie. If you get a chance, watch it. It's interesting. It's on Netflix. We kind of, like I said, we have our thoughts about it, but we're really here to talk about something kind of fun. 80s hair bands. Apparently there's a lot of interest in it right now. And so we decided to kind of dig into it a little bit with our own little take.
So, okay, actually, why is there interest or something? What did you see that?
It just all of a sudden started making the waves.
Really?
Yeah, I just started seeing more 80 hairband things popping up. Somebody put out a list of the 25 worst hair bands.
Really?
Yeah, so that list kind of hit the internet, and it was on one of the big search lists.
Was Striper on there?
I think so. As a matter of fact, we have a list of them. Let's see.
Oh my God, that is the band that for me never made any fucking sense whatsoever.
Well, there's a lot of these that don't make any sense. Some of them I haven't even heard of. I mean, so we'll just kind of run through them. So you got to remember, they're lumping glam metal into this as well. Which, is there really a difference between glam and hair bands?
I've always heard that they're like one and the same, except really, if you think about it, if you are a hair band,
yeah,
nobody wants to associate glamour with that, even though it is.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Twisted Sister. Okay. So take
Dee
Twisted.
Snider.
Yeah, take Twisted Sister, which has the hair and the makeup. Okay, and then you look at another band, and we'll say like Whitesnake.
Right.
Okay, which has the hair.
Yes.
Okay. That's Coverdale, isn't it? Isn't that Coverdale?
Coverdale is.
Yeah, he's in Whitesnake with the big hair.
Correct.
Yeah. So, you look at that and you go, so now I don't put the two together. Because honestly, I think Twisted Sister is completely a different band.
It was a different kind of music.
Yeah, it was.
Because there are some bands out there. Okay, so for me, just if somebody were to ask me what are the characteristics of a hair band, in my mind it was always a bleach blonde dude. Either you were naturally blonde or you paid for it, and you were just a frontman singer for a group of guys who were just better musicians than you.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, okay.
no
and so my example would be, like Vince Neil to Mick Mars, or Brett Michaels to CeCe DeVille. Those guys were, CeCe DeVille and Mick Mars.
But they all wore makeup and they all had hair.
Or spandex or fishnet something.
Right.
And their hair was really that was their most prized asset.
So that's what pushed Van Halen into that category. Because when you had David Lee Roth as the front man, he had the hair and the spandex.
Correct.
Because
and the moves.
And the moves. Yeah, because when I saw that Van Halen was on this list of hair bands, I'm like, say it ain't so. There's just no way.
No, because I mean, even when I was kind of chasing this down the rabbit hole, some of the bands that were being lumped into this category, I was like, man, I don't see that. Like, okay, like Guns N' Roses was one.
Right.
Kiss. I was like, Kiss, that's from like the early 70s.
Yeah, but they were still playing in the 80s.
But they were out. Because like when they lost the makeup, they were basically cruising on their own name. Now, me personally, I was more of a fan of their music in the 80s with no makeup than I was from the 70s. Only because their music in the 80s was way different. It's hard for me to describe. It was just a much bigger sound.
Well, they all followed the trend, though. I mean, when they started seeing these other guys, I mean, look at Guns N' Roses and Poison, and I mean, if you look at the top, top of that pile,
Poison and Motley Crue to me were like, even though I actually enjoy Poison. It's hard for me to lump some of these guys into the hair bands. Like Guns N' Roses, for me, no way. I mean, but in my mind, I just don't see, because they played a different kind of music. Their sound and their material was different. Plus, and let's see, there was Guns N' Roses. Oh, like Def Leppard. Def Leppard is rolled up into this.
Right.
And Aerosmith, and see, even Tesla was different. For me, some of the textbook hair bands would have been Motley Crue, Warrant, Mr. Big, LA Guns, and New York Dolls. Mr. Big to me was just a harder rocking Survivor.
Yeah, no doubt. That's I think you're right there. I think that's a very fair way to put that. It's funny because, like, for me, I listen to everything. Okay, I'm a redneck. There's no doubt I'm a big cowboy music guy.
Right.
But I grew up listening to rock and metal and 80s. I love 80s music. It's one of my favorite genres of music. But there were so many styles of music going on in the 80s.
Right.
It was almost like there was a band or a sound for every personality and lifestyle out there.
Sure. Yeah.
And so a lot of my exposure to 80s would have been airplay on the radio.
Okay, so me... So when I moved to my new neighborhood, or when my family moved, I moved to a new area, and MTV had basically just come on the air, like maybe within a year or so of me moving in. Right. So I wasn't around cable a whole lot.
Right.
So in the neighborhood I moved in, our neighbor across the street had cable, so that was really the place that I went to see stuff that I couldn't see at home.
Right.
Well, MTV was this new thing that once I was exposed to MTV, I was like, oh my God, this is literally like locking a kid who loves candy in a candy store.
Sure.
Because I was like, oh my God, between when I was exposed to this, so I got exposed to a lot of bands that didn't get play on the radio.
Right.
So like one of my good friends who passed away maybe a year and a half ago. He was the big brother to our little group. So with him, he would have exposed me to a lot of the other bands I would grow to love, like Def Leppard. Huge Def Leppard fan. Go back to the days when the drummer had all of his arms and limbs.
Right. Yeah, but you got to. That's quite a phenomenon, though, for a guy to come back to be a drummer.
Yeah.
To lose limbs and come back and still play. I mean, that was just amazing, and that was a huge deal when he did it.
Yes.
I mean, the premiere video when he came back, it was just amazing. It's funny because for us, MTV parties were a big thing.
Yeah.
But there was the VH1 show.
Yeah, I remember when
the VH1 had a lot of that type of music. So that was back when they did play music, and you really got to learn a lot about bands, and they did the interviews. And it's funny because we sit back and we laugh at the interviews now because those guys, they said some dumb shit.
Yeah, but they led such a freaking their lifestyles where you're like, I fucking want that.
Right.
Oh my God. Because when I look at it through the eyes now,
right,
I go, okay, yeah, that looks fun, but man, that was some dumb shit.
Oh yeah, for sure. But isn't that what you're supposed to do when you're young? Is a bunch of dumb shit? I mean, it really is. I mean, come on. I mean, you look at a lot of those guys now, and there's still a lot of them still play.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, granted, it might be cruise ships, and it might be small venues. I mean, I think the one that really was interesting. I remember when Great White played at a club back in, was it Baltimore or something, or Maryland or something like that? And they had a fire,
north, yeah,
and they had a fire, and it burned, and it kind of killed a lot of people in that club. You know, you kind of look at. I mean, I was like, I thought that band was gone. I didn't even know it was still around.
Here's the story about. Funny you should bring up Great White. Is it wasn't the Great White that this band that happened to be the band playing in this unfortunate incident. It was Jack Russell's Great White.
Oh, okay.
Because Jack Russell had already left the band, and the only thing that he could do is he could not officially use the name, but he could create his own version,
like a tribute band.
Yes, yeah. But the thing is like if you're writing a news story about people who died in a freaking concert, you're going to leave the Jack Russell part out.
Right.
You're just going to label it Great White when it really wasn't Great White. It was Jack Russell. It was a band that grew out of its association with the original Great White. But so Great White, their name wasn't their name going in. It was damn, I wish I'd have written this down. But Great White came from a nickname that the guitar player had, Mark something, whatever. There was something about this guy that it was a nickname he had for years. And so, you know, now I think I was like, how do you earn the nickname Great White?
Right.
But you know,
well, I always think of it as either Australian or a shark, or that's what I'm always.
Yeah, and there was something else going on at the time, probably trending, that made that a suitable name. So anyway, the record company execs or whatever said, "Hey, let's run with this," which I thought was kind of an interesting thing because their original name wasn't anything that really would have like stuck in my memory, but Great White does, because the first thing that pops up in anybody's mind is it's a shark.
Right. Well, Once Bitten, Twice Shy was one of the songs that really got a lot of play, and I kind of enjoyed that.
That album was outstanding.
It was. That was a good group. I mean, so I'm looking up the name while we're talking, but it's funny because Rhode Island. It was Rhode Island where there was a nightclub, and you're right, it was Jack White's.
Yeah. But
let's see if I can find the. Go ahead and carry on because I'm trying to look up that name while you're doing it.
But with all these bands out here, like my personal faves were like Cinderella, because I'm a big Tom Kiefer fan, and that to me I'm a big blues guy, because that was like when I was telling you yesterday when we were kind of discussing this, is I had a whole different slant to how I was approaching this. So, but one of the things that I knew what I liked when I was younger, and with my circle of friends, we knew there was certain music that we liked, and as we got older, everybody's musical interests evolve, change, grow up, go in different directions or whatever. But the thing that I never stopped liking was I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right, but Cinderella.
Yeah.
Rat. I probably could take or leave Rat, but Autograph, because some of those songs that some of these guys played were songs that I remember. Like if I'm driving somewhere, particularly like cruising on Westheimer, which is what we did. Having these iconic songs, at least in my memory of things that I like, I was like, it was great to have this freaking music blaring out of your car.
Oh, like Talk Dirty to Me. I mean,
the Poison.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I had more fun watching them infight with each other.
Yeah,
who's gonna out hairband each other? And then and the one that killed me was when Aerosmith come along and did "Dude Looks Like a Lady."
Oh yeah.
Man, wasn't that a shot at Vince Neil?
Probably, because
I think
there was always sort of they've always had kind of a running feud.
To me, that cracks me up because, first of all, none of those guys look tough enough to whip themselves out of a wet paper bag, and just to watch them, it'd be like watching two deer fight with the prancing feet.
What's funny is, so when we were talking about this, one of the movies to me that's sort of iconic of this period is the movie Rockstar.
Yeah.
So with
mine is Ford Fairlane, because it was all about hairbands in Ford Fairlane.
Okay, all right.
That was funny.
And then with Rockstar, it was the inner workings of bringing guys together to make a band. And so everything that we're talking about here in some way, shape, or form showed up in Rockstar, because you would have the guys fighting in the parking lot.
That shit's funny. That's funny. It's first of all, how do you take yourself serious? How do you take those guys serious? I mean, I get the artistic thing, and I guess I'm too business-like about certain things. I mean, I can put on the costume and do all the stuff, but when I'm trying to get through my day, I'm going to leave not looking like that dude.
Right.
But they literally, when you live that lifestyle and you're out in public,
it is not dress up.
No, not
because,
at all. When you look at how they come up, think about how they come up. They came up. I mean, look. Let's talk a little bit about Whiskey A Go Go.
Yeah.
Okay. And the whiskey, the clubs that all these guys had to fight their way up through to get popular, because a lot of times these are just garage bands.
Well, yeah,
these are just those dudes with the hair in a garage playing music, and they're looking for gigs.
When I went back to listen to Poison's first album, the talk, I can't remember what the name of the album was, but it was the one that had like "Talk Dirty to Me" and all their breakout hits. When I went back to listen to it, I was like, "Oh my God, this is almost like listening to a sort of a well-produced garage production."
Yeah,
it was very tinny and hollow, and only as their career progressed did their in my opinion their content got better.
Right.
So, but yeah, I worked with a guy. And when I worked utilities, I was probably only like 18 or 19 at the time. But there was a guy, his name was Roger. I remember him to the day, because he looked like a guy literally that had just stepped out of an MTV glam metal video. Think about like the stringy hair, but it was so his hair would like stick up. He always like gelled. He had like the handkerchiefs tied around his wrist. He would show up to work
the
like
bandanas
this.
like that. Yeah.
So and at night he sang with a band, or not at night, maybe on the weekends. But it was literally this guy was living the MTV lifestyle. He just got muddy during the week doing this stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
But it was like looking like a muddy cat.
So let me run through some names on this list here. So we got Guns N' Roses,
right?
Hanoi Rocks, Warrant, Poison, Loudness, Black Rain, The Darkness. So some of those I know, not all of them. Europe, Cinderella.
Yeah, Europe.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Europe. God, okay. I would put Europe right there with. They are probably if Europe, if there was a Broadway version of glam metal, Europe would be it.
Right. You have Cinderella, Bullet Boys, Crash Diet. Let's see, Whitesnake.
Did you say Crash Diet?
Crash Diet. That's what's on here, yeah.
Oh, my God. What
Motley.
names?
Yeah, I never heard of that. Motley Crue, Striker, Tiger Tails, Crucified Barbara, Hardcore Superstar, LA Guns. Remember that?
LA Guns. Yeah. So there, when I was going through the list, there was a lot of. So MTV did this special, and this was like later on when, I guess when they were developing programming, they had this. God, I'm trying to remember what it had to do with, like, heavier, metal. It was like a metal Saturday, where they preview, or they showcased heavier metal bands, like there was a guy that used to play with that came out. I think he came out of another heavy metal band. I forget what it was, but the guy was turned out to be a great guitar player on top of it. But you'd find like Bullet Boys, and they would be like Y&T would have been one of these bands.
Y&T, I actually love Summertime Girls. That was a great song.
Now Buck Cherry, I have no fucking clue why Buck Cherry is even there.
So we have Faster Pussycat, which is just a great name. I love that name. Tough, Dangerous Boys, Bonfire.
Yeah, see, I don't know.
Rat.
Okay, now Rat. Yeah. Stephen Percy. That was. I remember one of their first videos. I mean, it was to me it was kind of a cool video to watch, but the dude's kind of a dick,
right?
And because all the interviews I've ever seen with him, he always had this. He always gave off this persona that people should always know who he was, and I'm like, you're just a little bit better than a one-hit wonder, whatever. The only thing, they just don't have a name for it,
right? So we got let's see. Reckless Love, Babylon Bombs, Keel, Mr. Big.
No, Mr. Big. We've already covered that dude.
Wasp.
I know the name Wasp, but
Alice
I wasn't
Cooper.
real familiar. Okay, Alice Cooper. I don't even know why is there.
I know, right? I guess because he has big hair. I guess, or thinning, stringy hair. Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, Vixen.
Quiet Riot was on the list of. Like this article I read last night, it was bands that have been mislabeled as hair bands. So in that list, Guns N' Roses, Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, Skid Row, and I don't know if there's any more on, but at least those four were labeled, or actually in Tesla, and Van Halen, because Van Halen, that's like in the 70s. Well,
yeah. So there's three phases of Van Halen. There really is, because you have
you have
the David Lee Roth years, you have the Sammy Hagar years,
Van Hagar,
and then you have what the band was now at the end of that. So it's funny. So you have Vixen, Wigwam, Crazy Licks, Heat, Dirty Penny, New York Dolls, Dokken.
Now Dokken is an old school name. I know
big
Dokken.
Time. Yeah, Kiss, Crocus, Tesla, Great White, Aerosmith.
Crocus, I remember.
Bon Jovi, Pretty Boy Floyd, Icon, Kiss and Dynamite, Steel Panther, and Buck Cherry.
Steel Panther, my God!
I know
that's the band of all the dirty songs. Yeah. But I had never even heard of them,
right?
Until probably maybe 10 years ago. Only because if they weren't showing up on the radar then, I wasn't really paying attention. But like one of the other lists that I had lumped like the Cult into it, which I was like. The Cult couldn't have been further
from a hair band, yeah.
Because even their material was like way different. So
that's my favorite. I'll be honest with you. If I had to pick one group and pick a CD out of that group, the High Octane. Oh my God, that was you talk about getting a speeding ticket.
Yeah,
that album will do it. That CD will do it.
Their whole discography for me is
phenomenal.
I keep that in rotation.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
But yeah, there's some. To me, I think that there's a little bit of confusion over what constitutes hair band versus what's not, and even because now it's
pop metal. Pop metal is another word you keep hearing pop up.
With its melodic guitar riffs, along with borrowing 70s glamour. So like if you go back to the 70s, the people that were really kind of using makeup heavily then would have been like David Bowie.
Yeah, Kiss.
Kiss. Maybe maybe Freddie Mercury in some instances.
Right.
But they're creating their alter
Egos.
ego.
Yeah, for sure.
Their alter whatever egos, personas. So and I never looked at it as that was a thing, but it was.
Mm-hmm.
So. But yeah, I mean, I still jam to a lot of that music now.
I did too,
because it's familiar, and and I listen to new stuff too now, but it's a lot harder for me now to cherry pick through the new stuff, only because, well, number one is my tastes have changed heavily, so now and it's everybody evolves. So, I have my guilty pleasures, and then I have the stuff that I like to play when I'm, doing stuff at the house. And I don't want something as heavy and like beating into my ears.
So how many of these bands have you seen live, and where did you see them live? Did you go to venues here in town?
So the most popular venue during my early, or when I was legal to go into places,
right,
I would have gone to places like Backstage.
Right.
Backstage was over off of 59 and Bissonnette.
Right.
And it was, the place was really kind of unique. It was this, it sort of reminded me of something that you would see in LA. It had like, I think there was like, it might have been like 3 stories up, and you basically walk these stairs. So in the highest vantage point, you could actually look down on the stage of the band that was playing. I saw a lot of really good music there. I couldn't tell you, who any of those people were. Some of them might have gone on to do much bigger things. I was there because I was there chasing girls and shooting pool and hanging out with buddies. So I really didn't go there to listen to music. For me, I was there. The music was sort of like a secondary thing. I jammed to it. I just didn't run over and go, "Hey man, who's singing this song?" I just kind of rocked.
That's how it was for me too. I think a lot of the music was what I didn't hear on the radio. We heard hanging out with friends.
Yeah, it was just like noise to occupy, because it was way better than silence.
Yeah, because for me, I'm still a rock kind of guy. I mean, for me, I was interested more in like, I don't know, Steve Miller, REO Speedwagon. I was more into that type of 80s music.
Right.
The hair band stuff was always something that was there. I mean, Quiet Riot. I mean, come on, Feel the Noise. I mean, how do you not like that?
Right.
That was all good. And but I was more of an Aerosmith, Rolling Stones kind of guy.
No, I will say this. The closest thing I ever got to a hair bandish thing to do, and I think this will be the very first time that I have ever admitted to this, but God, I don't even remember how old I was, but I had long hair. I had really long hair.
Wow. And
so I had that shit permed.
No way.
Yeah, for real.
That's one thing I can say I've never ever even considered.
No, it was because kind of the crowd, the group that I was running around with, that was just something.
Dude, you gotta have a picture of that somewhere, don't you?
I don't know.
You gotta find that.
I'd have to go take a look. Yeah. But it was hysterical because when I look back on it now, I laugh when I look at it.
Was it like a Bob Ross perm?
No, no. Because and I had, so my hair for the most part was like straight blonde. Okay, right. I'm blonde, not anymore. But it was straight and long. There was absolutely no freaking curl. The only curl I ever got was bedhead. That was it.
That's funny.
So, so when I did the whole perm thing, number one is I had to. That's one of those things where you have to like really do a lot of internal talking to yourself.
I'm telling you. Yeah, I've never done that.
But the group I was with, this was like no big freaking deal. Right. I mean, this was it's a vanity thing. if you think about it.
Sure.
So it was, you're robbing components from this genre of things that, like for me, okay, so I had a huge music collection, or it was huge in relative to the time. Mm-hmm. So I would have guys that would come to my house and hey, I'm going on a road trip or whatever. Can I borrow your tape case? So I'd give them, I would have these tape cases full of just all this different music, and these guys, they would go on their, going off to do whatever it is they're going to do, and they would borrow my tape cases.
That's
and
funny.
they would be, as many as 100, 150 tapes of just stuff that they could listen to on their road trip.
That is, so for me, I was that way with Night Ranger.
Uh-huh.
I was a big Night Ranger fan back in the day. Don't Tell Me You Love Me. That was a good song. They lost me at the Twisted or the Sister Christian kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was okay, but I was more into that kind of music where it was it was rock ballad.
I was going to say it's like power ballad.
Type stuff. YNT, Summertime Girls was a great song. I enjoyed that. There was all, so my music, like I said, 80s, I loved Something to Believe In.
Yeah, because
that was a good song. Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle.
One of the things that to me sort of branched out of the hairband era was if somebody says okay, give me a power ballad.
Right.
Most of your power ballads are going to come from that era.
Sure. They really are, yeah.
And there's a lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good ones.
Sure.
So actually, trying to find a power ballad is a hell of a lot easier than finding out who or who was not a hair band.
Right.
Is lumped into that group.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, we're sitting here, like I said, we've talked about a lot of these bands, and some of them I've never associated with hair bands.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what the criteria is.
You were talking earlier about music now versus music in the 80s, and so you talk to a lot of younger people and they go, "Oh, you like that music because that's your era you grew up in."
Right.
I'm hard pressed to really find music today that has the soul and the life that the music that we had in the 80s had. I mean, seriously, think about it. I mean, the most popular song right now is about a murder-suicide.
What's that?
Oh, it's going around on the internet right now about a guy that's talking about his shot his friends, and it's a real yeah. And I'm like, oh my god. I mean, you listen to that kind of stuff. They lost me when grunge came around. I got to be honest with you. Grunge was there were some Nirvana songs I liked, because we talked about this the other day because we were talking about Sound City,
right?
Which is a great documentary. If you ever get to watch that, you need to find that somewhere. We found it on Tubi, I think it was.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this now. So what's the guy that narrated it? Can you look that up real fast?
I can.
The guy. Okay, so he's the drummer with. God dang it.
Well, you mean Dave Grohl?
Dave Grohl.
Yeah, Dave Grohl.
So. So I'm a fan of Dave Grohl.
Me too.
I'm not a big Foo Fighters fan. Now,
right.
He is a talented musician. There's just, I'm not all into the whole Foo Fighter thing.
Right.
They do some songs that are okay, but as far as the things that he does to showcase kind of the history of his musical journey and the things that move him when he's researching rock and roll. I was like, if this dude, whenever this dude passes, to me, his passing will probably hit me probably the same way that I'm a huge Tom Petty fan.
Oh, for sure.
So when he goes, that will be to me as just as large a loss.
Well, no doubt, for sure. What's really funny about Dave Grohl is I'm like you. I didn't think much of. Honestly, I know people are going to hate on that, but there were some good Nirvana songs out there. Don't get me wrong.
I like Nirvana.
Yeah, they had some good stuff. I just didn't like the whole grunge thing.
Right.
But when Grohl broke off and started doing his own things, well, obviously he didn't have a choice after Cobain domed himself, but But when he broke off and he continued into music, a lot of bands would have fallen apart, right? And the guys would have just been stumbling around. Grohl, to me, was a leading entity in that band.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought some of that stuff held him back. And I felt like he got to evolve like he's supposed to.
Right.
And like yourself, I look at him as a music historian and archivist. Mm-hmm. He's a purist. You look at guys that say he didn't go to a prestigious music school. And, like a lot of these musicians. I was going to say
majority of them.
Yeah, majority of them. He literally became a walking, talking encyclopedia of all this. And now he's a collector.
Right.
I mean, like I said, the Sound City documentary was fantastic. And it took you through each of the era. It took you through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And you got to see some of the hair bands go through there and do their recording. And it's funny because, to me, music, it's a huge business, obviously, but there's so many connections made with music.
Right.
It connects people that probably would have never connected.
Right.
It reminds you, like, deja vu when you listen to music. And there's a deja vu moment that literally takes you back to a place in time. And it's funny because the way our brain works, it just makes those kind of connections.
Well,
sight, sound, smell.
It's funny when we were over at Todd's house the other day.
Yeah,
and so we're playing on Todd's arcade machines.
Yeah,
and these songs from the '80s are playing.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh my god! It literally felt like you were in a time machine and you went back to an era where playing video game machines was a thing to do.
Oh yeah, and you had all that music.
And all that music was there. The only thing that you couldn't change is just the older body that the old chassis that you're doing all this in. So.